Welcome to Lifestory from Thelma Podcasts and the Living Memory Association. In this episode, we're joined by former Chelsea and Scotland star Pat Nevin. Pat takes us from growing up in Easterhouse and Barlanark to playing for Clyde while still at university, before joining Chelsea, later moving to Everton and Tranmere, and then finishing his playing career back in Scotland. We talk in depth to a man who loves music and being alive more than he loves football, but who usually brought sheer joy to both himself and the fans whilst he was on the pitch. Back in time we go. Pat Nevin, welcome to Lifestory. Thank you very much for joining us.
Absolute pleasure to be here.
And we'll just start off, whereabouts did you grow up, Pat, and what are your earliest memories?
East End of Glasgow, so Easterhouse, basically a rough area. You know, in Glasgow in those days, a lot of people had been moved out of the city centre to get a better life. So you went to these new towns or new kind of satellite areas, and they were supposed to be this lovely new, golden new place to live. So when I explained that they are Castlemilk, Drumchapel, Easterhouse, it didn't really turn out necessarily the way that the original planners thought. But the thing is, I loved it. I loved living there. I loved growing up there. A tenement, top of the tenement, 8 of us, including mum and dad, in a 3-bedroom tenement. And just grew up there until I was about 11, 12, and then moved to Barlanark, which is about a mile away, which is a slightly bigger house because there was loads of us. And I just loved East End of Glasgow. I loved the fact that all my family were around me, but more importantly, I could play as much football as I wanted, because that's all anyone ever did. Basically, all you could afford to do, because it didn't cost anything. All you needed was a ball, and that was what I kind of spent my time in my early kind of days doing. The earliest memories was walking onto the sea when I was about 3, down in Troon. We'd gone there, and mum and dad chasing after me to catch me. And the reason being is I had a plaster cast, or should I say, stookie, on on my arm, because I'd had a terrible accident, a really serious accident. I was in Lewis's in Argyle Street, or John Lewis, whatever, and I was going up the escalator. Right, you're going to cringe at this. I didn't warn you now. If you're eating, stop, okay? I was playing motor cars on the handrail, and my hand went up and up and up and over and down and into the workings of the escalator. Exactly, I warned you.
That's horrific.
It's horrific. So as it went under and I started getting dragged back into it, someone dived at the emergency button and stopped it, and all my fingers were ripped off. The scars are still all there, and I've got a big scar all the way down here still to this day. Anyway, they changed the laws and the rest because of me. People don't know this. This is a new story, by the way. So you had to have a guard underneath where your hand could go if you were a little kid. Anyway, it made a right mess of it. They nearly amputated, but they fixed it up, but it wouldn't graft back together. And I had this plaster cast on for months and months and months, but it wasn't. The whole arm had turned into goo, and I was running into the sea. 3-year-old, I didn't care. I didn't know. I had a stoogie on. Ran into the sea, and I was chasing my parents to keep it out. Fell in, arm went in the sea. It was better 2 days later.
Really?
What saved it. Yeah, that's what absolutely saved it. And oddly enough, maybe it's ingrained somewhere in my mind, but in any injuries I've had, the sea has really helped me over the years, and I've kind of used it and manipulated it in various ways. It's not very new age. It's not like that. It's freezing. So if your ankles and things like you're damaged, you use that. The sand, if you put your foot deep into the sand, pull it out, there's suction on the tendons, and that works just in while they're frozen. So the sea's great. I mean, there's a reason why the top horses get sent into the sea. You know, it's not just for fun. Anyway, that's my first memory.
Well, it's similar to a story that Mickey Weir told as well. Often he'd be told midweek that it was very unlikely to make the game at the weekend, and he'd go down to the sea, up and down for about half an hour in the sea, and then he'd make it again. Can you tell me a little bit about your parents? What did they do? Yeah,
Dad was he worked with British Rail, and Mum was housewife and took care of 6 kids. So that's a full-time job. My dad's he took me and trained me from a very young age. He did it to all the boys. We went training with him. It was every day, so worked in skills and various things. Now, he was also coaching a lot of the boys' clubs, school teams, so a guy who works a typical normal working hours, a hard labouring job would ask you to work, and then we'd come home at night and do about an hour's worth of training with me, and then go down and have his dinner, and then go up and have his dinner, and then go and take care of local boys clubs and local for no payment or anything like that, for nothing, because you do that to help. So it was extraordinary, man. And my mum spent a large part of her life washing football strips of a multitude of teams. So my dad and my mum were You know, they were of that generation that, you know, they never pushed us into anything. They just gave us opportunities that they could give us. The biggest thing they gave us was time. Just give us all the time. We weren't wealthy, obviously. You don't live in that part of Easthouse and that sort of background. But I can't ever remember thinking, I wish I had A, B, C, or D. We're brought up to think that material stuff wasn't particularly important. And again, that stuck with me my whole life because I've never had really any interest in material goods. So it doesn't make me good or bad or anything. It just so happens that I don't have great interest in many material things. So, you know, what they gave us was time, fun, a kind of base morality, a basic morality. Now, we were brought up as Roman Catholics. I happen not to be anymore, but, you know, the kind of whole Christian ethic is fine. It's great, and I'm big on it. I like it. But also, it was something more than that because they were kind of socialist, but not in a tub-thumping way, in a kind of, we care about our fellow man kind of way. So not in a party political way. So there was a very, very, very strong ethos. But it was all about inclusion with everyone else. So it wasn't you are A, so you don't like B. You know, we were Celtic fans, but we didn't hate Rangers fans. You see the world we live in now, and I feel so outside it. I feel such a different part of the planet that, you know, if you're a yes or a no or a leave or a remain or a Celtic or a Rangers, and I just don't have any of those feelings. I've never had them. You know, and people don't get it. People say, oh, yeah, you must hate them, or you're anti them, or you're just A, B, C, D, whatever it is. And I'm thinking, I'm not actually, but that's really your problem more than my problem, really. And that was all brought from my family and the way they were. So we would go to the Celtic games, but you know, we wouldn't be swearing, but we weren't allowed to swear. Like, you know, come I'm at Easterhouse, you know, no chance. You know, everybody else might have been doing that. And even kind of, you know, told off for using what would now be considered the language of the area, but was then considered to be slang and too much of the accent. Not because they were snobbish. They just said, look, speak as well as you can. Try and be understood. Whereas now that would maybe be looked upon as, oh, well, are you ignoring your roots and your culture? But it wasn't the way it was thought of then.
And going back to your dad taking you to the park to train, what age would that be? From when did that start?
If only I knew. Forever. There was, where we lived in Easterhouse, there was East Hall School was round the back, and there's a football pitch and lots of space. By the way, red ash, obviously, not grass. So, you know, after work, you know, and after the back from school, you know, sometimes my older brothers, Michael, Thomas, my younger brother Joe would come. But, you know, if they didn't want to come, don't come out. So I'd be out driving around cones, stuff that you would see the Will Curver group doing that, but my dad was doing it then. He'd been a boxer. That was his sport. So he was big on training, big on fitness, big on just doing sport for health. You know, that was the thing. So doing sport purely for the love of the health of it, the joy of the sport. And that's what we did, and that's what we all did. It was quite good fun winning as well if you won, but it was kind of almost a wee bit secondary. On top of that, I added something else as the years went by. I added what I thought was, to be a wee bit indulgent, artistry. You know, there's an art in sport, and I like that side of it. So the teams that I was watching at the time, like Celtic, during the late 60s and the early 70s, you couldn't watch them and watch players like Jinky and Kenny, and, you know, because I've seen those two eras, the edge of the Lisbon Lions and the start of the Quality Street gang. And you watch players like them and Davy Hay and all the rest of it, and Danny McGrain. I mean, for God, that was art, man. They were brilliant. And so were all those other players. So we loved that. And then, of course, the other big thing was the Brazil 1970 team, which was my kind of, all right, so you can do it and be beautiful and do it for the love of it. And everyone else will sort of sneer at you for having these high-minded ideals. But, hey, somebody's got to have them.
And I still, going back to the ash pitches, I still see a lot of the ash pitches in Glasgow. And although obviously getting your knees landed on those was brutal, but I think that there's a link there between players like yourself and Jimmy Johnson and guys like Messi and Ronaldo who were brought up on rock hard ground, you know, to do with balance. You know, I think that's a thing that might be possibly lost to the game, and that you couldn't come crashing to the ground. You know, it was all about staying on your feet. There's a great analogy I watched recently. By the way, I believe you, and I agree with you completely. I think you're absolutely spot on in that. But if you look at, I'm not comparing myself with Maradona and Pele and all them, right? But, you know, look what they learned. You know,
not the best situation. The ball's bobbling all over the place. You had to learn to be able to do it. And one of the things I often hear these days is people going, the game's changed now. It's so much better. And look at the way they pass the ball. And I'm thinking, good luck trying to pass the ball like Barcelona or Manchester City on the pitches that they had to play on. There was a certain, and I'm not talking red blaze here either. I'm talking the pitches you played professionally. They stunk. I mean, they were awful. They were bobbly as anything. And the brilliant analogy came through. It was a game, who was it? It might have been Man City Spurs. Man City were flying high, and it was just at a time when they were really doing well under Pep. They were at maybe their best, very Barcelona-esque, passing the ball for fun. It was beautiful to watch. And they played Spurs at Wembley, because Spurs were playing at Wembley at the time. It's only, I think 4 or 5 years ago. I can't remember how many years ago. But there had been an American football game the night before. So those players played on the pitches that we played on when we played. They couldn't play. They couldn't do it. There was just, I sat watching it, and if I have a hero in football currently, it's been for the last 10, 12 years, David Silva. He played football exactly the way I tried to play football, precisely the way. And I'm watching it, I think they can't do it. They can't actually do it. And the reason why they can't do it is because A, they've never been trained to do it, but B, there's a certain type of game that you try to do that zippy passing along that when the ball's bobbling. You can't do it one touch, because if you do it one touch, it's going to hit off your knee. So it was very intriguing that those of us who learned in those pitches, those red blaze pitches, we kind of learn certain things, that others, since then haven't learned. I mean, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I don't know. But I think you'll still find players coming out of the barrios in South America that will have a skill set and a skill level higher than some of the players that you get from, the well-trained, lush European pitches.
And your brothers, obviously, they play as well. Is there a reason why? Did they make their way in football at all, or they just play for fun? Or
No, we all played for fun. None of us played to make it in football. Tommy and Michael particularly, they're older than me, probably same standard-ish, sort of same standard-ish. Tommy ended up getting trials for Clyde. Michael, I remember he played in a game one night at Celtic Park against Celtic in a combined schools team or something like that when he was 16, 17. He scored a cracker. And he was a very good player. But they gave it up to do their education, as did I. So, we all did the same thing. We played and played and played. And then when it came to time, we thought, we better stop playing now. It's time to go and do the degree. And that's what they did. And so did I. And then I fell back in it by mistake. So, it's, there's different types of players to me. Michael was more of a Dalglish type player, back to the ball, centre forward. Tommy was a right hard-working midfielder, left side. But very good players, really decent players. And in a different life, in a different world, and with different choices, they could have made a profession out of it. But like me, there was no interest in becoming a professional footballer. They just done it for fun. So, and I really enjoyed the times playing with them. And I learned a huge amount off of them as well, because I played a lot of football with my brother, particularly Michael, because he was 4 or 5 years older than me. And what a help it gives you to any youngster coming up, that if you've got somebody to play with every day, they're quite good and they're older than you, because you're dragged along. You are dragged along at such a pace. And that was kind of what they were kind of doing as well. But if maybe something, I maybe stuck to it a wee bit longer, was a wee bit more dedicated to the love of it. And also I happened to be into, long distance running and stuff like that, which I kind of suppose helps you as a professional footballer. But there was no plans for that.
And was there organised football at your primary school then? Did you have a primary school team?
Yeah, primary schools. I was at, as it was then, Blessed John Olvey, then named St John Olvey after that. But yeah, I was playing in the school team from the age of 8, but I was in boys club teams then as well. So quite usually it'd be a school game in the morning, boys club Saturday afternoon, different boys club Sunday afternoon. Most of the summer there'd be 3 nights a week. And where I lived in Easterhouse, there was the Easterhouse League, co-set up by my dad, where you ended up having under 11s to under 16s, sometimes 18s, and you would have 20 teams in every league, and that's just Easterhouse. And it was organised and it was structured, and it was an amazing grounding of where young lads could A, spend their time out of trouble, and B, learn about football and learn about health and stuff like that as well. It's amazing. I could still tell you all the names of the teams: Auchengill, Glasgow, Blue Star, who I ended up playing with, and there was millions of loads and loads and loads of teams. Lochbridge, So, but my dad would run one team, and my brother was playing with another team. I was playing with one team. But there was 40 games in the league, and that was just the summer league. And then there was cups. So there was huge amount of organised football, and it was all just done by parents. It was all done by parents in the local area getting together saying, we need football for the kids. There's millions of pitches here. I mean, it's not, you don't see it so much anymore, but you go up to Loch End and places like that, there's 10 pitches, so you can have 10 games on. It's all right, you can do all that. And when I was growing up, they were all full every night. It's extraordinary. Imagine that now. It's unthinkable, isn't it? And that's how many players we had in Scotland coming through. We had that massive amount of people just playing football all the time. And of course, we have nowhere near that now.
Yeah, and you will have grown up in a similar era to myself. I grew up playing in leagues from under 10s, I think, but obviously there's a great move to try and take that out of the game now. How do you feel about competitive football from a young age like that? 'Cause I don't ever think it did me anyhow. I loved it, and I think...
Yeah. The upside is, for those it suits, like you, myself as well, it's fantastic. It absolutely sits us down to the ground. Remember, we've gone through periods, particularly in the 70s and 80s, maybe a wee bit later than that as well, where competitive and elite were dirty words in skill sports. You remember that, potted sports and all that sort of stuff. And those of us that were going, oh, you don't get it. It's really simple. There's sport, and there's competitive sport, and there's elite sport, and they're all different. Of course, try to tell that to local government, you're wasting your time. And we lost a kind of half a generation of people doing that, taking an element of competitiveness and understanding that the word elite became a dirty word. It isn't some things, yeah, I'd agree. But in other areas, particularly sport, when you're trying to be the best, no, it's not actually. That's where you have to be. If it's competitive and it's elite sport, which you're aiming for, other sports are fine. Other parts of sport, you can play football for fun. It's great. There's walking football out there, and everyone, you don't have to always win all the time. And I think people got mixed up in the midst of it there. So lack of competitive leagues with fun football, fine. No problem whatsoever. People are trying to push on to be the best they possibly can and become elite. Those people. No, you need competitive sport. You need to push yourself further. If you don't, I will make you a solemn promise. Somebody from another country will, and they'll be better than mine.
To return to your life, Pat, to go back to that moment between when you left school. So you left school to get your degree. Was that was the path that you were on? You went straight from school to university?
Yeah, so like all the family, it was the thing, it was really my family. There's 6 kids coming from the East End of Glasgow. Now, to be honest, particularly that part of Easter House, 6 kids in the other families weren't all going to university, trust me. And it wasn't those times it was a very small percentage. Now it's about 50% of people go to do higher education. So, but then it was nowhere near that. So you had to work hard to get out of that. We also had the help of a grant, which was great, because you used to get a grant in those days. Everyone got it if you managed to get the right O-levels and A-levels and higher. So, I was 16. I'd been at Celtic. I'd been at the boys' club, leaving there to go. Some of the lads would go on to sign for Celtic Football Club. But I had no thoughts on that. I was doing a degree. I put in to go to Glasgow Uni, Clyde, Glasgow Tech as it was then, and one other, which was PE College. And I got accepted for them all, except PE College, Jordan Hill. They didn't. I think there might have been a darker reason why I didn't get into that. I think my name, Patrick Kevin Francis Michael, wasn't helping me very much on that occasion. But I accepted I got accepted for the others, but it was the actual degree that I wanted to do. And it just so happens that was happening at what is now Caledonian University and was then Glasgow Tech. So I went and started my BA Commerce there. But I was loving playing football. I went and played for a wee boys club called Gartcosh United, because there's no reason why you should stop playing football. You love it, but you maybe play a bit less because you're studying and you've got a degree to get.
So where do you fall back into football then, Pat? When does that become the bigger part of your life again?
Absolutely. There's the rub. I don't know if it became a bigger part of my life again. No, I was just playing a bounce game against Gartcosh. We were pretty good. We were winning everything we were playing, and it was a weekend off, and our manager was asked if he could take us along to play against Clyde reserves to give them a wee bit of warm-up. It had been, freezing, games had been called off.
So sorry, is this under 18s or under 21s that you're playing for?
Under 18s. Under 18s. So I was about 16, 17 at the time. And as I was walking off at the end of the game, having basically taken the mick the entire game, counting how many players I could beat, their manager kind of grabbed me and went, "Do you want to come and play for us?" And I said, "Nah, I'm doing a degree, mate." And he went, "You sure?" I went, "Yeah, I'm doing a degree. I just play football for fun." And he went, "Well, what if you could play football for fun and play for Clyde, and we'll pay you, and you don't need to stop your degree because we're part-time." I went, "Really? How much do you pay?" £35 a week. I said, "Where do I sign?" How many albums can I buy for £35 a week, man? So that was it. It was no more than that. The odd thing is, had I been playing against any other team and any other manager who'd come up and asked me if I wanted to play for him, and I'd said no, he'd have went, "He's not got the right attitude," and walked away. But that manager happened to be Craig Brown. And Craig Brown was a lecturer, and he understood what a student's mind's like. And he understood that I hadn't quite figured out that you could play part-time and do something else. So when he explained that, I went, get a go. So I did. And it was weird.
Were you with Clyde throughout all the years of your degree then, Pat? Is that how it unfolded?
No, so that was year one, Clyde, and we won the league. I got player of the division. Weird. And then I was kind of trying to pull away from it a wee bit and failing. And so next year, up in the next division, Chelsea came in to buy me, and I told them, no, not interested. And carried on the next year, second year of degree. And then it just kind of, there was a lot of interest. You know, I kept on scoring, kept on doing all right. You know, I still not mad on it. I was more interested in going to gigs, you know, going out with my girlfriend, doing my degree, hanging about with my mates. I was nuts. And the dichotomy here is I was a fanatical trainer, and I would be doing 15-mile runs just for fun every other night because I like running. Right, so I'm completely dedicated to the craft of it, utterly dedicated to the craft of it. And that's what people don't get. It's like, they say, "But you don't seem to have cared." Well, I cared about doing something well, but why do you do it? And I did it for a different reason. I did it because I liked doing it, not because I wanted anything else like fun or fame. I wanted fun, but I didn't want fame. I wasn't there for money, nothing like that. None of those things had any interest in me. I just wanted to do it for fun. And that's kind of what I kept on doing. So the end of the second year, I had a year left from my degree, and it was then that I was tempted down south. And I went to the degree board and said, "Look, do you mind if I take a 2-year sabbatical? You know, I've been offered this wee job, playing for Chelsea." And of course, it's never going to work. I'm 19, and I'm like scrawny little runt, and, you know, they're buying me for buttons, and they're a big club. So they don't expect me really to work. They don't expect me to be, you know, successful. But it's a wee punt that they can make. And I'd figured out you could go and see more gigs if you're in London than if you're in Glasgow. And it was just mad. It was so I had a year left of the degree to do. And I said I'd come back in 2 years. And I hope I'm not still waiting. They're not still waiting. I'll tell you why they're not still waiting. Because they gave me a doctorate years later for the services to anti-racism and stuff like that. My mum wanted me to finish it, but I'd learned a lot in that degree, huge amounts in that degree, which was really handy, and every bit of it became handy all the way through my career. And
going back to that move to Chelsea then, Pat, did it feel like a mammoth jump in the standard of football to move to the English second division?
I just don't, it's hard to remember how I thought about it. I didn't suspect it would work, but I thought, they're paying me some money, I can hang out in London for a couple of years, you know. The biggest downside is I could remember was I was enjoying Glasgow. Music scene was great. I had a great bunch of mates at Glasgow Tech. I kind of missed that. But, you know, why not? You know, we were kind of cool like that, my family. And my dad wanted me to have a little bit of a go of it going down. But, you know, it was one of those, it was not exactly going down as a youth player, but it wasn't much of it, you know what I mean? It was just a young kid. I mean, you look at Billy Gilmore at the moment. It's amazing how quickly it's happened for him. But I went down there and, I mean, I get player of the year at Chelsea my first year, you know, like, and I'm still got my student head on at this point in time. And we won the league the first year. And it kind of, the jumping standard, you realise, to get back to the initial question, you realise very quickly in training. So you go into training, you're playing with others who are of the standard of the league. So if you can live in training, then you can live in the league. It's kind of logic, I think. So the first few training sessions, we were in pre-season, so going on long distance run. And I'm absolutely battering them. Absolutely battering those pros. Because I'm a distance runner. I mean, I'd run distance running for, you know, representative and things like that. But I kept it hidden. I hadn't told them. So we go in these long runs and there's about 3 of us out in front. like miles ahead of everybody else. And they're going, we didn't know he could do that. And then you play in the games and then you realise, actually, it's all right. They're not that great. They're no extra special. I can live with that. And I was lucky because we were in the second division at the time and we won that division that year. God, easy start I had to my career, didn't I? Every time I play for a team, we win the league and I get player of the year. But that was a jump that from training I knew. The next jump was the year after that, going up to the top league, which would now be called the Premier League, knowing if you could live at that level. And that was interesting. I didn't I'm worried about it. I didn't have any, I've never been nervous in my life, so I'm not very good at being able to explain nerves. But I kind of look forward to it. Yeah, have a go at that. That's the right attitude to have.
And that first season in the top flight saw a title challenge. Did your squad, maybe you're just too busy enjoying it to worry too much, but did you think there was a belief in the squad that they could maybe do it that year? That was the second year, wasn't it? Yeah, you finished sixth or something, yeah, the first year, but the second year was the challenge.
So this new group of players that we've got we're now in our second year, so 5 of us had all signed the same couple of weeks. And Kerry Dixon went on to play for England. Did myself. Goalkeeper was Eddie Nesvika, who was the Welsh international goalkeeper. But Spackman, who ended up playing with Liverpool and Rangers. They done well. They'd spent less than something like 300 grand and managed to buy half a team, maybe 400 grand, and they bought half a team. And every one of us worked out. Joe McLaughlin was bought, and he played centre half there for about 10 years. So they bought all these players that were young. And they all just work. So when we move up to the next level, we're sitting thinking, well, why not? Did we think we would win the league? I don't think it would have been on any of our minds. I think we just wanted to go up and play. But there came a point partway through the season where actually we're right up there. And you ask a good question. In hindsight, I don't know the answer. But I don't think I was thinking of winning leagues. I was thinking of just playing every game and just enjoying it and just trying to be the best I could be. It was nothing more than that. And if we were going up the league, the one thing I did learn, and I knew anyway, because I'd been taught this at Celtic Boys Club when I was there, and at Celtic when I was there as a kid, and it is that elitism thing of you are better than everyone else. There is nothing wrong with feeling that. The reason why you are at this club is because you're the best. So, and it gave you this feeling of not arrogance, but because I had no arrogance, I don't have any arrogance in any other sphere of life. But if I walk on a football field, I didn't care what age I was, I can beat you. I don't care who you are. Oh, you're Kenny Sanson, the left back for England. So, you're just a bloke. I spent my life watching all these giants playing for Celtic and gone training with them sometimes. Why would I worry about anyone else when I trained with them guys? Yeah. No chance. So there was no fear, but there was just a hope that we could do the best we did. And to be honest, it was Luke's one in that 6th place that you're talking about was pretty damn good for a team that, just over a year and a bit before had nearly gone down to the 3rd tier of English football and really had gone within a kick of the ball to the 3rd tier. And then suddenly there was us up, mixing it with Liverpool's and Arsenal's and Man United.
And just nipping back slightly, Pat, to that confidence in your own ability that you have. How old were you when you realised quite how good you were? Is that at a really young age, or?
I'd never have used that phrase, how good you were. I would never have considered it. I just didn't think in those terms. It's a hard thing to explain, but I would never have been put, if you'd have, at the age of 12 or 13, you'd have put me on with the best under 18s in the country, I'd have felt, yeah, okay. Yeah. I would have. I'd have felt. I might not have managed, but I would think, yeah, I've got that. Because you always play above your age groups. And I was small anyway, with the boys club, the Celtic Boys Club, I was often put up the age groups as well. So you ended up playing with older players. But through the years, as various things happened, you end up trying. I was trials with lots of teams I was sent to. I just went for a laugh, and always thought, no, that's okay. So it was kind of always there. But the second you crossed that white line off the pitch, I would never have thought I would. If I'd have taken time to think about it, I thought, really? It was a classic occasion. I went down before I was at Gartcosh, and I went down to train with Ipswich for a week. I just fancied going to Ipswich, and I had some cousins there. So I thought, I'll go there. You're paying me. It wasn't much, but I just thought I'd have a look. Anyway, they moved me up within a few days to play with the first team. And I was like scrawny wee, and I had my punk ripped leather jacket and everything on, right? And they're looking going, what is this? And Bobby Robson's giving a look of what's going on here. So I didn't look like the other players anyway. But I decided to take the mickey of one of their players. A guy called Terry Butcher, right? And it was really funny because I knew that Terry was my cousin and he didn't. So I just wanted to have a laugh with him. Of course, he's a big lump in centre half. He's brilliant, but he's the perfect player for me to play against. Like, because from my size and my height, I just use my strengths, which is turning circle and things like that, So he ended up trying to kick lumps out of me. It was so funny. But there's me. I'll walk up to the England centre half and say, "Yeah, I'll do you." And then when I walk off the field, I would be very, very. I wouldn't say a boo to a goose after that because it's on the pitch. You're a different human being.
And moving back to the career again then, Pat, are the Chelsea days, was that the happiest period of your football career, do you think?
Don't know if I had the happiest period.
Sounds like you were always happy, Pat.
I am, yeah, that's me. I kind of, if you look at pictures of me back then, I don't look happy, but I was spending too much time listening to Joy Division. But I just think I had a positive outlook in life, and also being given that from my family. If you get above yourself in any way, because we had this thing of education is a good thing, a great thing. Learn as much as you can. It's very much built in the working class of self-educate. Be an autodidact if you possibly can, but learn as much as you can. I've had a bit of stick over the years of, who do you think you are? You think you're too good for us? And I'm thinking, excuse me, why shouldn't working class people do the best they can? Be that education, be that anything. And I find that quite offensive. I'm hard to offend. I find that quite offensive to the working class when people say things like that. So, to back to the question, what was the question?
It was about whether Chelsea was the happiest time of your career.
Yeah, so whenever I played, I just played for the joy, the fun of it. And I always felt if I keep the fun in, it doesn't mean you don't work hard. It doesn't mean you don't work hard than everybody else in the team. And I also had the very fortunate position. I kind of love training and I love running. I mean, I am no spring chicken now, but I still hill run. I still go up hill running. I still do stuff. I do a lot of sort of workout stuff just because I like the feeling of it. So I'm getting paid some money, not massive amounts, but some money to run about and kick a ball. I mean, be serious. What is the complaint, guys? And I used to drive me mad with footballs all the way through my career. And maybe it was wrong to think this way. When the ones would be complaining, it's a bit cold today, or the training's rubbish, or it's a bit boring. And I'm thinking, honestly, guys, you really don't get it, do you? You're kicking a ball, you're running about, you're saying that you can probably bog off home at 12:30 if you want. I'm just going like that. But that's because I have a background that I have. I have a state of mind that I have. And it's no reason why everyone should have that. Not everyone's like that. But it just did drive me mad. So when I played for Chelsea, and my first season at Chelsea was joyous, right? Clyde was fun, just playing with your mates, right? But I would say I had one season with Kilmarnock near the end of my career, and I don't know if I was happier. I don't know if I was happier any other time than that 1 year with Kelly. And it was about coming back up to Scotland. It was about my dad, come to see me without travelling 8 hours there and 8 hours back sometimes. But it was about a bunch of people I was working with. And I just loved those guys. I mean, you've got lots of old teammates in your career. I mean, hundreds in your career. How many of them are mates, really? I would say the biggest percentage of people that I would say are mates from my career play for Kilmarnock. And consider that's only a year. I was only there a year. But the memories of that are absolutely brilliant. They're really... I mean, I'm sort of writing a lot at the moment, and the stuff that I'm writing about Kelly is just brilliant. I mean, really, I laugh out loud just at the thought of it. Some of the things that Bobby Williamson would say. Because Bobby was the manager at the time. He was brought up about 100 yards away from where I was brought up in Easterhouse, but came a very different direction. We're very different. But the times I had, the things that Bobby Williamson would say to me were absolutely fantastic. And I just liked that as well. And some of those guys, Gary Holt's now still, he's Livingston the manager now, and he was one of my best pals there. A guy called Dylan Kerr, he's now working in Africa. Top guy. Just every guy in that team. When I see any one of them, I love them.
And is that true? So Bobby Williamson managed out in Africa as well, didn't he? Didn't he have a big adventure out
He
there?
did, yeah. Bobby was out. He was the new king of Scotland and Uganda, wasn't he? For a while. Yeah, Bobby was out there. Bobby he's kind of very... I love the down-to-earthness of it. If there's one thing... I was going to say did drive me mad, but that's wrong. Does drive me mad. It's the preciousness of... I was going to say footballers, but quite a lot of people, let's be fair. The preciousness of some footballers these days. I have no time for it. at all. You know, you have no right. Any time any footballer says, I wasn't given respect, honestly, see if I had a ball. What? Kicking a ball, getting paid $100,000 a week for it. Shut up and go on with it. Like, and I'm kind of in the midst of all this kind of Glaswegian trying to get out, say things like that. And that was the thing about me. And Bobby and myself and Bobby and all the lads at Kelly, that's what we were like. I felt at home. Whereas, you know, sometimes you go to big leagues and top players, and they're just so pleased with themselves. You know, some of them, not all of them, but some of them. And I ended up being the chairman of the union in England. I'm kind of saying, like, I'm having discussions with Gordon Taylor, and somebody's coming with a problem, and I'm going, tell her to lighten up about that. You know, that's not a problem. The most first world problems I've ever had in my life. Tell me, get yourself in gear, but no, you have to help. And we would help everything. And some of them had terrible, hard and real problems, which we did help with. But, you know, some people would come up and you just hold your... The word snowflake had never been invented then, but I wasn't fanatical about it. So when I went to a place like Kelly and was surrounded with people who, you know, they didn't feel as if... The vast majority didn't feel as if football owed them a living. They felt like they owed something to football. And that's my attitude.
The Everton move. Chelsea were relegated. Did you have any thoughts of hanging about, trying to get them back up? Or were there too many offers on the table, or what?
It's quite complicated, and it would take far too long to explain it all here now, but I was leaving anyway. So before that season, the end of that year, I was leaving. They changed the style of the team, and it didn't suit my style. So I was leaving anyway, and I'd agreed to go and sign for Paris Saint-Germain. So it was all sorted neat with PSG, which I was kind of looking forward to. And then just at the last minute, I was on a beach in Corfu with my wife-to-be, Annabelle, having a wee break. And we were just going to go back after that. And when I say a beach in Corfu, I mean with a bunch of Australians who were going about in those old VWs. I mean, nothing fancy, trust me. Kind of like that kind of more real kind of thing. And the guy we were staying up above a kind of a restaurant bar thing. Guy came running down and goes, oh, there is a phone call. You must take phone call. And I said, oh, right, what is it? So I went back up, and it was a phone call from my flatmate in London saying, Everton want to buy you. And I went, tell him I'm coming. Cheers. All right. And that was it. And that was the extent of the negotiations. I went, tell him I'm coming. Because I hadn't agreed to go to... It had been set up for me to go to PSG, but I hadn't agreed it by an agent who wasn't my agent. Because I've only recently... I'm 57 and I got an agent 6 months ago. 6 months ago. And only for a book, only for writing a book, only a literary agent. So it was just that. It was just that kind of, all right, okay. And Everton were a right good team. And I knew I was leaving Chelsea anyway. So if I'd been asked to stay at Chelsea, if they really wanted me to stay, I would have stayed 100%. Right. Not even a shadow of a doubt, I would have stayed. I loved the place and still do, but that wasn't an option. So because there was no option, and of course the fans all thought, not all thought, but some of them must have thought I'm rat off a sinking ship because they'd gone down. And I could have actually went in press and slaughtered the club but they needed the money. Yeah. You know, they were getting about £1 million from me, which is a lot of money then. There's no way but I could have gone and slaughtered the club for the way they were dealing with me. Why would you do that? So, okay, so some of the fans are a bit fed up with me. So what? I'm not going to turn them against their club just so I can feel a wee bit better. Yeah. And I couldn't get my hand. I've never still been able to get my head around all that stuff. Like, people are so involved in themselves and forget, you know, hey, you worked there for 5 years. All those fans quite liked you. You're just going to wind them up now and, you know, let all the fans of Spurs and Arsenal slaughter them because their ex-favourite players slaughtering them. No, don't do that. Just quietly leave and be respectful. So that was it. So I agreed to go to Everton. And I met their manager, a guy called Colin Harvey. And I would say I was 6 minutes, probably less than that, in his company. And I just said, nah, I'm signing for you, 100%. Just listen to the guy talk. Yeah. Honesty is a kind of... You can't see honesty in everyone. I don't see I understand honesty in everybody. I don't think any of us can. But there are some people we do know. You just think, no, you're honest. You're straight. I like it, straight talking and honest, right? And Colin, just 5 minutes in his company. He thought, yep, he'll do for me. I'll work for you. And it was a huge, big move to leave London, because I loved London. And still, again, I still love London. I really do. I love the place. In fact, I probably like it. In the last 5 or 6 years, I worked there quite a lot. I probably like it more than I've ever liked it in my life. There's a real feel about the centre of London. They've cleaned bits up, Marylebone and all the rest of it. So I was leaving up, and I lived in central London when I lived there. So that was kind of a big thing, because I was leaving all my friends that were down there, and the arts and the theatre and the gigs and all the rest of it. It's quite a lot to leave. But it was just a new time of life, I decided to get married. Happily, my wife didn't disagree with the idea. And it was a new challenge, But I still didn't think I was a footballer. I really didn't, by the way. I'm just doing it as a pastime.
And your whole attitude to football, Pat, and that kind of almost enjoying one game at a time attitude, do you think that insulated you at all from the disappointments, like the relegation at Chelsea and the playoff defeats at Tranmere? I mean, you obviously felt disappointment, but do you think your whole attitude towards the game helped you go through these disappointments?
My attitude towards life, I think. I don't know if it was game. My mum used to say things to me like, "You're trying to fix your hair" or something like that. Nobody's looking at you. All right, thanks. I'll put me in my place. And it was kind of a thing in my family when we grew up of, does it really all have to be about you to anybody who was so self-indulgent? So yes, you'd be disappointed in something. We live in a bit of a me culture, and I'm not talking about youngsters taking selfies now. It's not that. We've gone in. There's large parts of culture now that is self-aggrandizement. It's about, self-celebration. I want to laugh at me. I really like laughing at me. I quite like, that's one of my favourite things. I do not want to take myself seriously. So yes, to some degree, yeah. How can I walk away? Like, here's a perfect example. I scored the winning goal in the FA Cup semi-final. We get to the FA Cup final. That's pretty good, because, it's a big old game, and bigger then than it is now. And I've paid off a big chunk of my the money they've paid to get me there. I play well, man of the match and everything. That's a good day. So I was really, really happy. And then I got off the pitch, and then 96 people have died in the other semi-final. Now, if you cannot get some sort of perspective in your life when things like that happen, and start getting, we get beat in the FA Cup final. Yeah, I was pissed off. I didn't want to get beat in the FA Cup final, obviously. And we worked hard and we tried hard, and life might have been different had we won that game. Beaten 3-2 in extra time. Am I going to walk about fed up when there's 96 people that are dead? When all their families have gone through it? I've been to a lot of the funerals. Don't be daft. I mean, the daftness of thinking that is just it scrambles my brain. So other things like, I'm a bit down. I would rather the other thing happen. Am I going to walk about in a depression because of it? No. Other things will get me down. The family things, something I'm drawing the family. Yeah, that might. I'll do my best to deal with it, and people you care about. But I just couldn't get it, and I still can't. Like, the thing that really gets me, and it's almost certainly a failing with me as well. See, when somebody cries at the end of a cup final or something because they get beat, I'm like, oh, be serious. It's a game, mate. Really, it's just a game. Okay. I'll go back to the concept. The concept's simple. Do you define yourself by who you are or by what you do? I've never defined myself by what I do. It's by who you are. And maybe that's it. If I was to nutshell it in any way, that's better than... It's not you don't care about football. You absolutely do care. It's not you don't care about doing the best you possibly can. You do. You care about all those things. But a perspective of one day you're going to walk away from that, you better have your head in a good place when you walk away from it. Because see, if you think you are a footballer, which many did, 2 years after you, it's gone, man. They're not going to be sitting saying you're the best things in sliced bread. You're just an ex-footballer. Go and find out who you are. Now, and the amount of troubles that we had with players afterwards with suicide, depression, drugs, gambling addictions. I mean, the marriage breakup levels, the top level of football, within 2 or 3 years at the end of their careers, is just beyond a joke. But, I'm thinking it's because she you thought you were a footballer, she married a footballer, it would have been a good idea if you married the people, and the footballer was something else. And I just had such a thing about this all the way through my career. So it's a very long-winded answer to say, yeah, a bit fed up with it, yeah, but, perspective, seriously.
And that, I suppose, that whole attitude towards life and football must have helped you get through the end of your careers in the way that it's destroyed a lot of people. When it coming to the end at Kilmarnock and Motherwell, I suppose, were you just thinking on to the next thing? Was it your body gave up, or did you naturally?
No, the manager kicked me out. No, so the brilliance. I mean, so I went to Motherwell, and a couple of years there. They weren't as much fun because I was chief executive and player, and then a couple of years as chief exec. The guy bought a John Ball, wanted me to be the manager. That's what he brought in, and I said, "Well, I don't want to be a manager. I'd be rubbish at that. I'm not the right type of personality for it. You need one of those kind of guys, or you did in those days. I don't know if you do really, but I didn't want to do it. I chose the manager, and at the time it was Billy Davis. And to be fair, in many ways it was a good choice because if you look, he's one of the very few managers Scottish who's managed in the Premier League in England. So he was a good technical manager, very good as well. But at the end of the second year, this is the weirdness of it. So I'm chief executive, but playing as well. He's manager. I've made him manager. I'm his boss, but he's my boss. And he calls me in and says, "I'm not getting you a new contract." I went, "Oh, fair enough. I need to trust your judgment because I've made you manager. So I'm not going to argue back. So I'm going to say, well, I've made you manager because I trust your judgment. If you don't think I'm worthy of a contract, then that's fine. I will decide whether I stay or go somewhere else." I mean, I was 36, 37 at the time. I had another offer to go to another club and play for them. One of my friends had bought a club in Scotland, and he wanted me to come and help him run it. So I was tempted by it, but in the end I didn't. I thought, do you know what, 19 years? It's quite a long time. I've done enough of that. A lot of other things I wanted to do. I was beginning to do quite a lot more in the media. I'd been writing for quite a long time, and I enjoy writing. Writing's one of my real pleasures. So I was writing for a lot of newspapers and various people. So I just thought, no, actually, that's okay. It's hard to explain. I didn't miss it at all. Not at all. For someone who loved every second of it, I never thought, oh, I wish I was back out there again. Never once. Well, I say that's a slight lie. There's now and again, maybe 10 years and 20 years later, I've been walking down by Stamford Bridge and I'm interviewing somebody at the side of the pitch, and it's a beautiful, warm September evening, and the pitch looks absolutely great. And I think, I'd love to be playing today. But it's not in front of a crowd. It's not for the glory. It's not the Champions League. It's not Sky. It's not that. It's that pitch looks good. So it's a right good day for a game of football. That kind of feeling.
Did you carry on playing fives or sevens or anything, Pat, after you finished professional?
It's complicated. I wanted to, and I did for a while, and I kept training. But an odd thing happened just at the end of my time at Motherwell. Oh, what have I got? I'll edit this. I'll really edit this down, right?
No, that's all right.
It's complicated stuff. So I'm coming to the end of the time at Motherwell. The club was going into administration. I'd had a disagreement with the owner. I had a buyer to buy the club, so it didn't need to get into administration. I'd already organised who was going to be the new team to run it, who was new owner, and I was going to stay for 6 months. Then I was moving on to my next thing that I wanted to do. But I could save the club, right? In the midst of it all, so they refused to sell and they couldn't come to a deal. So the club's getting into administration. But I'd actually hurt my leg. I was having a pain. And I went to see the club doctor, and he said, I'm worried about your lymph nodes, mate. That actually might be quite serious. I went, all right, okay. So someone's basically saying you might have cancer. So I went, actually, there's bad things happening just now. He said, well, you need to go and have a scan. So I went and had the scan, and they couldn't give us an answer. But that next day, the club was getting into administration, and I'm trying to help all the players, all the staff, organise the whole thing, still trying to make sure it doesn't go into administration, still trying to get this other buyer to buy it. And all the time in the back of my head somewhere, there's, by the way, you've got a big C. But never mind, that'll have to wait. Put it to the side. Anyway, in the midst of it all, those press conferences going on, mayhem going on, the press are going mad, phone call for a specialist. Can you come and see me right now? I went, no, I can't. I'm a wee bit busy just now. He goes, I need to see you right now. And I went, I really can't, mate. Just tell us. I'm all right with these sort of things. I can take it. If it's bad, just tell me. He goes, I can't. You need to come to my office. Could you come to my house tonight? I went, that's serious. I actually can't. I can maybe find time tomorrow afternoon. And he went, okay. So I went, did all this stuff and got home and didn't even say anything to my wife, and went in the next day and had to tidy up a few things, and then, well, I better go and see this guy. And I've now have time to think about it. It was that manic. And the press was so wild, and it was all, I went to see a specialist. I sat down and went, okay, give me it. And he went, I think you need a new hip. And I went, yeah. And? He said, that's it. I went, is that it? And he went, well, most people are very upset with that. I mean, you're a young man. You're only 37. I went, yeah, but look, a new hip. It's not an operation. It's like putting the car in for a service. And he looks at me and he's going, our club doctor hadn't said to him that he told me what he thought it was.
All right, okay.
So between the doctor telling the specialist and the specialist telling the radiographer and then getting back to me, I've basically been told what it probably is. But he didn't know that. Anyway, I'm sitting there laughing my head off. And he says, that's quite an unusual reaction you've given me there. And then he knew nothing about football. He didn't do that down for a job, right? But he came up with a brilliant line. And if anyone had ever seen me play, they would understand it. I said, anyway, that's 37. That's quite young. Is it an inherent damage? Is it something that's inherited? And he goes, no, I've looked at the scans. It's very strange, the shape of your... Did you do much twisting and turning in your life? Yeah, maybe a bit. Yeah. I had no idea what I did. So, the short answer to your question, did I want to play fives? Yeah, I'd like to have carried on playing fives, but I had to get a hip resurface. And then a few years later, I had to get the other one done. And after having done them, 3 years after, so it took 3 years, I then get back to playing 11-side for fun, yes.
Oh, brilliant. Are you still going?
And I still do, yeah. Don't play the 5-side, hard floors are bad. So if there's an outside game that I can play outside. Or a really nice AstroTurf, a 4G, I can play in that.
That's good to hear. That I played football in New Zealand for a while. We lived in New Zealand for a while. We had an overage team, and we had a centre half who was 58, who could just read the game really well. But I love the concept, because in New Zealand, in those days, it was like, in Scotland you'd stop playing football at 32 or 33. Whereas to see someone still going at that age, I was just, it's possible. But the weather has a lot to do with it, But,
yeah, weather helps. I was supposed to be playing at Stamford Bridge just a few months back in the Football Aid game. One of the charities I've worked for over the years, and I was director of for about 10 years, was Football Aid, and it's a fantastic charity. Ex-players play, so you basically, the concept's brilliant. If you want to play for your favourite team, be it Celtic, Man United, Scotland at Hampden, we put on a game at the last day of the season. You turn up, the pitch, your Scotland top or your whatever top's waiting for you. You play on the pitch, you get changed in the dressing rooms, we film it, all that sort of stuff. But you get one ex-player from that team plays on your team. So for years, I've always helped out because they always need ex-players to play. And I was supposed to be doing the Chelsea one this year, and of course, COVID didn't allow it to happen. And, I was gutted with that. I missed my game down there.
Yeah, I'd like to just touch on you've just mentioned Hampden, so we'll talk about your Scotland time just as the last kind of chapter of your football stuff. You played in a strong under-20s team and then 28 times for the big team. Can you tell me a bit about your debut for Scotland against Romania? How did that feel, pulling on the blue jersey?
Yeah, it was odd because we weren't a Scotland supporting family. You remember the Irish diaspora stuff and all that, as well. So we weren't big Ireland fans then, but we supported our club team. So it wasn't a big deal. When I was 18, and I played for Scotland under 18s, and then played for them, and then watched the Tartan Army, and there were small under 18s games, I suddenly became incredibly Scottish. I got it. And it's because there was no culture of it where I came from. And then I finally really, really felt Scottish for the first time when I was 17 or 18. 17 probably. We won the European Championships, which was pretty good. And I got player of the... I was still doing my degree at this point, under 18s. Then so we go to Mexico for the under 21s. And there's the Tartan Army there. Small, but they're there. There's 100,000 Mexicans. But there's the Tartan Army, the kilts singing along. So by the time I play for getting the first Scotland cap, I'm buzzing. I never ever thought it would happen. No chance. Oddly enough, my dad always did. He was a coach, and he'd never said it to me, but he told my brothers. And when I got my first Scotland cap, they said, "Yeah, Dad always said you would get that." Oh, thanks for telling me. But it was brilliant. And the lovely thing was to walk out afterwards, because we're quite cool with each other, my dad and I. He's no longer with us, but we were very cool with each other. So we wouldn't make any big deal out of anything. I just walked out afterwards with a plastic Tesco's bag, with a strip inside it. There you go, Dad. I think that's yours. And that was a brilliant moment. You know, it's great walking on, and the fans, and you know, playing for your country. And every time you get the ball, you try and give it to Kenny, all that sort of stuff, because it was his 100th cap or something. And I'd watched him growing up, like, going, wow, it's Kenny. But it was, I don't know, it wasn't any valedictory kind of validation of anything. It was just lovely because I'd spent all my career down in England up to that point, and you come back up and you think, oh, my mates might be here. You know, it's a lovely, it was just a really nice feeling. But there's weird things happen when you're like that, when you have a different outlook. I mean, the first Scotland-England game I ever went to, I got a game. Like, it's kind of unusual, that, isn't it? I got a game. I got one for the last half an hour, and I was at Wembley. So I loved it, and I became madly loved my country and loved being part of it. And I'm probably the most Scottish member of my family. I say I am very much the most Scottish person in my family. So I hate it when the national team gets beat. I can't watch it. It's hell on earth. The recent stuff's been great with Clarkey, because obviously he's a good close friend. We played together at Chelsea. And as I famously tell people, we played for 3 teams together. We played for Chelsea and Scotland and England. Oh dear. We played for the English League together.
Where did you watch us qualify, Pat?
I was doing it for Radio 5 Live. So it was really a brilliant moment to go through all that sort of stuff. It's one of the nice things about the job that I've done for the last number of years, is you get to see games like that. You know, you get to be passionate, but obviously it's 5 Live, so it's slightly different from, say, BBC Scotland would do it. You know, so you have to have an honesty about it. But you would anyway, but you also have to rein in slightly. So I wasn't at the game because it was over in Serbia, obviously. I was doing it from my studio. And I did this very interesting thing, because you know what we all did when the moment we qualified, the moment that penalty's saved, right? We all go mad, right? It's fantastic, right? But I can't in that second, or I don't want to in that second, because there's a thing goes in, I don't know if you noticed, and I'm kind of old school with this. If a goal scored in a game, the commentator, that's his moment, that's his job, that's his life, to talk about that moment. He might even have prepared something for that moment, and he will be recorded forever and remembered for that moment, right? So it's his whole life. I don't want me in the background going, yeah, over his moment. Yeah. Because that's self-indulgent from my point of view. Now, in actual fact, that's old school. Modern way is everyone's shouting and screaming. Yeah. And everyone's bawling over the top there. And that's all now what people play out. It's all about showing the exuberance. And that's fine. That's absolutely one way of doing it. I don't do that. So was yours just an internal sort of silent movie celebration, was it? No, I gave him 4 seconds and then I let go. I gave him his 4 or 5 seconds, man. And then I just erupts, like, you know. So it's not always, it's there, but you must, when you're doing any sort of thing on telly or radio or that, you are controlling yourself all the time, because if you aren't, you go, for sake, or whatever, you know, you would swear, and I wouldn't swear, I don't swear a lot, but, you know, you would say something desperately inappropriate for the moment. So you have to be a level of control all the time. But there's been some joyous moments, you know, doing that, and some really horrible ones as well, which have been really kind of hard to deal with. But I was one of my favourite ones. I'll tell you my favourite one. You're asking about Scotland, but I'll tell you a different one. So my team in Scotland now is Hibs. So I'm a Hibs supporter and have been for 15 years now, something like that. I used to be Celtic, changed to Hibs. It's a long and involved story. I don't hate Celtic. They're my second team, but Hibs are my first team now, right? So, but in England, my team's Chelsea. So that's who I support in England. But there came a problem one day, because Chelsea were playing in Champions League final against Bayern Munich. Hibs were playing in the Scottish Cup final against Hearts. That's a tough call. I'm being asked to work at both of them. One for BBC Scotland TV and one for Chelsea. And I'm thinking, what do you do? You know, because if Hibs win the Scottish Cup for the first time in over a century, it's just total history. And it's against Hearts. And I'm doing it for BBC Scotland TV at the time. But Chelsea, they'd never won the Champions League before. So, as you probably know, Hibs got beat 5-1. by Hearts, and Chelsea won the Champions League, and I chose Hibs. So I went to the Hibs game. So I did the Hibs. We got beat, and the worst thing was, and this is why I'm telling you this story. That night I'm doing the highlights programme for Sportsy, and the Chelsea game goes to extra time and penalty. As Didier Drogba scores the penalty that wins Chelsea's Champions League, I am jumping about the studio like a psychopath, right? I am all over it. But I've got an earpiece in, which is saying 6, 5, 4, 3, jumping about a head case. And as soon as it comes on, I sit down and silent, right? So there's a level of control you need at certain times, but I was so happy for Chelsea. But how bad would that have looked for Hibs fans? They see me jumping about. So there's a level of control that you kind of, it's kind of has to be there, but when it erupts, it erupts.
And were you covering the Hibs Rangers game when the dream finally came true for Hibs then?
I think that might have been my last piece of work for BBC Scotland. So that was just brilliant. I did something after that game which it's brilliant. A couple of downsides to it. We were behind glass, but the Hibs fans are right in front of us. We're at Hampden, but we're behind glass in the kind of studio. I kind of want that to be open, really, because I like to feel it, I'm at the corner where the corner's taken, where the header scored. And it's the way it was done, coming back from behind, it's Rangers, for goodness sake, and all that. So we finished the game, watched the fans. It was actually very, very moving. I think a lot of people felt. And as soon as that sunshine released, it's a shame what happened just afterwards, people on the pitch and all the rest of it. It was really quite moving. But after the game, I did something that I kind of haven't been many years since I've done. Instead of walking back to the car, which is in the main car park at Hampden Park, I just walked through the fans. I just wanted to see their faces. I wanted to feel it. And the amount of men in the 70s, 80s and 90s and women just walking along in tears. Their entire life, they never thought it would happen. I remember talking about this to the lads for the Proclaimers, Charlie Craig, and they said they always kept the Scottish Cup final free, from touring. Wherever they were in the world, they'd get back. And then they finally gave up. They weren't there, I don't think. So, but it was a really brilliant point. And my son, who's fanatical Hibby, was at the game as well. I kind of wanted to be with him as well, but he was over the far side with a good friend. And it was one of those moments where I don't know. It's hard to explain it, And everybody went through to Edinburgh afterwards, and a lot of people think I've gone later, I live in the East Coast now. I'm from Glasgow, but I've got an East Coast team now. But it was a brilliant moment. It was right up there with the best things that I've ever enjoyed in football in my entire career.
Yeah, it was a tremendous game.
No, career's the wrong word. Life.
Yeah. I'm a Celtic fan. It was a tremendous game of football as well. Just the drama in the game. I've been reading about it I've just finished Irvin Welsh's Dead Men's Trousers, and they recreate. They're Hibs fans, the characters, so they recreate it in that. So it's good reading about it there again.
Yeah, we're a stylish bunch, Hibs fans, aren't they? You look at them, the type of fans they have. They're kind of the celebrity fans are a bit cool, aren't they? Apart from me, obviously, but we're kind of a cool bunch. They're all right.
We'll start winding up now, Pat. It's been fantastic. Thank you so much for all your stuff. What are your hopes for the future? Have you got any unfulfilled dreams or goals?
I've never had a dream or a goal in my life, ever. I can say that comfortably.
Yeah.
I just want to go and cruise along nicely. Remember Gordon Strachan used to say that. People say, what are you doing next? What are you doing? He goes, do whatever happens. And people thought he was at it. And I'm going, yeah, that's the only way to be. I've loved the writing. I mentioned it before. I've written this new book about March. But that's part one of it. Part two is well underway. I've written most of it. Part two. And I don't care. Don't care is the wrong word. If nobody ever buys it, it's not really that important. It's. I wanted to tell these stories, and from, as you can tell, probably from such an outsider within this world, it's kind of it really is an unusual perspective, and I've been trying to write it for years, but just not had the time. I've just been too busy working, and then I just decided a little while back to write it. And honestly, I think 3 weeks it took to write 120,000 words. Now I had to tidy it up, to be fair, but there was so much I wanted to say, and there's so much more. I'm loving the writing. The writings, I find the creativity through football. I missed that. Didn't miss anything else. I missed the creativity. The staying fit, I could stay fit anyway. All the other sides of it didn't really bother me. But I love creativity. And the creativity of writing or whatever, I absolutely adore it. And not just in myself, in anyone, if it's real creativity. So if I have any hopes or wishes, just to give them a wee chance. For personal ones, because real hopes or wishes is just what you want for your kids, my daughter, my son, all that sort of stuff, my wife. But in reality, for a selfish one, I'm generally incredibly happy all the time because I've been really lucky and I just take the rough with the smooth. But if I get the opportunity to continue being a wee bit creative in whatever area I'm working in, that's all I'd kind of want. And the areas, no. There are a number of areas that I like working in, but that's what I'd like to do.
And a lot of people write an autobiographical memoir and then move on to write fiction, Pat. Have you got any thoughts in that direction?
I remember I wrote a play years ago, never got it out, never showed it to anyone, just wrote it because I wanted to write it. And there are other things that I've thought of doing. But I'll get these first couple out of the way first, and then I'll see what... I just want to see what you feel. But I'm just loving it so much, and it comes so... I just feel normal. It just feels kind of natural. So I like writing. I've always loved writing. I've always loved English, and it was always my favourite subject at school anyway. So it's just something that I will do. I don't know what form it will take in the future. I hope it's not poetry. Poetry's hard, man. It's really hard. Poetry's just too hard. And I once asked my friend of mine, I don't think anyone knows this, he asked me if I could write the lyrics to a few songs in his album. I honestly, because it was poetry, it's the only time I've ever been stumped. And it turned out to be a good album as well. I wish I'd have written them. And he just, as a mate, he wanted me to do it. I'm like, so anything other than poetry, I think, because it's too hard.
And this might impact my last question as well, Pat. It's obviously maybe not going to be poetry, but how would you like to be remembered? Have you got an inscription for the Nevin tombstone?
Don't care. No. Why? You're dead. You don't know. I hope my son and my daughter, my wife, who will hopefully be around a lot longer than me, remember me fondly and not sadly, and remember me happily. But other than that, I mean, here, right, can I give you a classic example of this, right? Here's the classic example of why I think this. And people think, oh, you're just saying that, that's a line. See if you go online and put my name in on YouTube, the first thing that comes up is a dreadful penalty miss against Manchester City.
I
right?
did that today, Pat. I
It was
know that's
me.
true.
I know, and it was me that asked it to be put up, right? If you go on and put Pat Nevin skills in, you'll see footage of me scoring really good goals and real unusual kind of flicks and scoops and things like that. I don't know, a couple hundred people have watched it.
Yeah.
Well, as opposed to 10,000.
I saw that as well.
Oh, I bet you didn't get to the end of it though.
I did.
But that's the weird thing. That is the weird thing. You know, it's probably funnier that people, if people remember you for that, then I don't really care. It's not important. And in the world we live in now, that's probably what they will. But so, does it matter? I don't think it does.
Pat Nevin's book, The Accidental Footballer, is out in March. Pat, thank you so much for your time. It's been brilliant.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, our further reminiscence and music shows Lifestory, Leith Lives, Forgotten Songs from the Broom Cupboard, and Analog Rory's Jukebox can all be accessed from the Projects tab on our website or via Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Until next time, we bid you farewell.